Our next panelist is Farid. Amin Farid is a Singaporean choreographer, arts educator, and researcher. He has a PhD in theater and dance studies from Royal Holloway, University of London, and his research expertise is in the performing arts and heritage of Southeast Asia, as well as a keen interest in the politics of intercultural and artistic activism within the region.
We sit on chairs with our eyes closed, facing each other to calm our nerves as we prepare for what we will present in a short while. Shortly afterwards, I break the silence, seeking permission from my collaborator, Elizabeth, if I may start our presentation with an opening ritual of reciting the Basmalah, the Islamic phrase in Arabic, which is recited at the beginning of each chapter in the Quran. I explain how the ritual is a common practice amongst practitioners, intertwining bodily practice and faith. Elizabeth asks, may I observe along? I nod and enunciate, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. So in March 2018, I collaborated with Elizabeth Chan, a Chinese dance practitioner, researcher, and current PhD candidate in the Department of Theatre Studies of the National University of Singapore, to create a performance lecture entitled Intersections, Traditionally Speaking. Together with my expertise as a practitioner-scholar of Malay dance, the performance lecture was an opportunity to facilitate a collision course between research process and performance, encouraging dialogue among different artistic disciplines, platform to bring together practitioners and or researchers to investigate, question, critique, and collaborate on performance practices and forms in the context of the contemporary world today. The premise of such an attempt came about as a result of our own keen observations of the current art scene in Singapore and the lack of conversations amongst artists of various disciplines, specifically traditional dance artists. And as PhD researchers doing ethnographic fieldwork and archival research at home in Singapore and elsewhere in Asia, we thought that such a dialogue was indeed necessary. And I think because this is a reflective essay, I am not able to provide a concise overview of the politics of multiculturalism in Singapore. However, I would like to say that I situate my work in dialogue with the work of my colleague Aparna Nambia, who presented earlier, and also with my colleague Yu Chang, who will be presenting in panel 3 later about multicultural dances. So I offer a working basic definition of complex culture of Malay dance and Chinese dance, because it is very complex, and to just call it as such is not doing it justice. And so I have chosen to define it to be movements that may represent the racial communities of Chinese and Malay Singaporeans, and forms which are imbued within them cultural values, morals, decorum, aesthetics, histories, etc. At the same time, although these forms have developed local national identification, it may also be affiliated with larger historical and regional affinities of diasporic communities in the region. And it's through this process, Elizabeth and I, we documented some of our observations on sketching them on notes on large sheets of paper, which I'll show you later. And there were parallels and intersections on the various issues such as identity formation within a multicultural nation, the limits of innovation within the paradigms of the traditional, the teacher-student dynamics in pedagogies of dance transmissions, rigidity of gender roles, as well as the problematics of terminology and genre classifications. Just to say a little bit about the performance lecture, it was 90 minutes, and as a performance format, it was a mixed mode, allowing us to share different elements or components such as physical demonstrations, lecture with the use of conventional and digital visual aids, and there was a post-show dialogue with audiences at the end of each presentation, which was moderated either by a researcher or an artist. And so I wanted to say a little bit about the performance lecture and the choice, because we saw it as a way to provide an opportunity for intercultural and interdisciplinary dialogue, and it's also a way to provide us that space to subvert the stereotypical role of the traditional artist as subject of, in my opinion, living the promise of the happily diverse multicultural nation, and providing Elizabeth and I, that's my opinion, the agency and empowerment to critique and provide our perspective about our own practices. Hence, I see in intersections, our performance lecture, as what ethnomusicologist Simon McCarroll deems as translational research, to communicate new knowledge beyond the community of practice, to demonstrate insiders' aesthetic, somatic, and affective knowledge cross-culturally. So this is actually the poster. We were trying to cover our mouths because we were saying, we knew that we were going to say things which might not be very acceptable within our own communities of practice. So so the choice of performance lecture was to acknowledge the performance of our collaboration and dialogue as process which could foster new knowledge, as opposed to the idea of only a lecture that could imply knowledge as a finished product. And secondly, because we were then in the process of our own PhD candidacy, we acknowledge our own delicate positions as researchers and active practitioners in the field. And we also wanted to ensure that we were aware that our prospective audiences could be members of our own respective communities, and to guard, to some extent, the delicate statuses as students of our teachers and juniors to our seniors. Presenting the work as a performance lecture was a way to also, not to be too authoritative, as an impression to our communities. And lastly, we were definitely very dependent on generous funding from organizations, from governmental organizations as well. So we were quite careful, when presenting this work. So in a nutshell, I think I just wanted to actually show you a lot of the photos that was taken. So this was actually taken by Jin Kai, who is a prominent photographer within the dance scene, and he gave quite a visual spectacle to such a, I would say, to such a performance. And just to share a little bit before I end, Adriana, I'm finishing. Just some photos, and this is something which I'll elaborate also in the article. So this was us learning how to walk together, learning that we were, practicing different ways of walking, and how that initiated conversations about other things. And this is us also, using props to talk about innovation within tradition. And just a little short clip. Right, so just some concluding remarks. So COVID-19 environment has pushed for digital means of presentation these days. So that has also been, quite problematic, or at least challenging traditional modes of transmission. So traditional artists, especially veterans, are learning to adapt to emerging and overlapping models of knowledge production and presentational modes. We saw the performance lecture. Probably, I think I see it very much as a format just empowering the traditional artists, which in itself is a very problematic term to use here, bringing to question happily diverse multicultural representation of the nation state. So thank you. I think I'll stop there.